honestly, if you only do one thing from this video, it needs to be this, because if you don't do this, your lazy coworker is never going to put in effort. You're going to stay frustrated AF, and they're going to continue to add to your workload. Hello and welcome back to my channel where I help you slay your career and cultivate the successful life you deserve. You're probably here because you have a problem that so many people have. You are dealing with a lazy coworker. I know this can be extraordinarily frustrating. So in today's video, I'm going to break down my best tips on how to deal with your lazy coworker. And if your lazy coworker is getting all of the praise and you're not, you're gonna definitely wanna make sure that you stick all the way to the end, because I'm going to be speaking specifically to that. If you're ready to sort out this whole lazy coworker situation, tap that like button and let's jump into it. My first tip for you is to really consider if this is a you problem. And I say this because this is one of the most common things that I see, especially when you're a high achiever. It's very easy to get frustrated by the people at work who are not necessarily pulling their weight. But it doesn't always actually impact you or the work that you are doing. So I want to ask yourselves these questions to figure out if your lazy coworker is really having an impact on your work and on your potential career success at work. First and foremost, and this is probably the most common thing, are they passing their work off to you? If they're passing their work off to you, and especially when you're not getting the credit for the work that you're doing on behalf of your lazy coworker, that is clearly a problem. But in a lot of instances, your lazy coworker's lack of effort at work actually doesn't have any impact on you directly. And if that's the case, then it actually isn't really a you problem. The other question to ask is your lazy coworker in imminent danger to the well-being of your company, financially or otherwise? If the answer to either of those questions is yes, then that is a you problem. If the answer to both of those questions was no, however, then you need to MYOB, mind your own business. The tips I'm going to share with you in this video are still going to help, so definitely stay tuned. And this actually leads me directly into my next tip to deal with a lazy coworker, and that is not to hold others to the same standard that you hold yourself to. I know you high achievers have a high bar, it's way up here, but not everyone actually can live up to that. And let's just be frank, not everyone wants to. Not only does everyone have different levels of ambition, which is something that is probably showing up for your lazy coworker, we all just have different levels of aptitude and talent and potential. And not everybody is necessarily going to be at your level. And you know what? That's totally okay, because if they are happy being where they are, putting in that level of work, well, quite frankly, that's just less competition for you to get ahead, isn't it? Obviously, this is much more problematic when your lazy coworker is getting the promotions and the praise that you really want, which is something that I'm going to speak to in just a couple of minutes here. But if someone is just lazy because they are lacking ambition and they don't really want to do much beyond the role that they're actually in, then that maybe is going to make it a little bit less bothersome when you take that into consideration. The other thing I really want you to challenge yourself to do is ask yourself if you're setting the bar too high for you. And I say this because my clients, like you, are very high achievers, and they tend to set that bar way up there in the stratosphere, and it's not always in their best interest, because it is making them take on the work of their lazy coworker and spin their wheels and invest way too much time into work that isn't really moving the needle in their careers. It's really important for us to take note that effort does not equal extraordinary. It is really going to be the impact. I'd love to know if this is where you actually think your lazy coworker is at. Let me know in the comments down below. Now that we have explored the tips that are going to help you basically contextualize your lazy coworker, it's time to get into the tips about, actually doing things about your lazy coworker. And this action item I'm about to share is extremely important, because even if you're a high performing, high achiever, if you make this mistake when you're dealing with your lazy coworker, it can be a real career killer. When you're working with a lazy coworker, it is really important to keep that opinion to yourself. I don't want you to fall into the trap of speculating about your lazy coworker or making derogatory statements about their work effort or anything like that. This really just falls into the gossip track, and well, you guys probably know how I feel about that if you've been around for a while. If you've already been doing this, it's never too late to stop, but it's really important to really keep your opinions about your lazy coworker to yourself, because ultimately at the end of the day, when you're talking about someone else at work, it's only going to come back and hurt you. And my next tip is really actually when you're working with a lazy coworker, honestly, if you only do one thing from this video, it needs to be this, because if you don't do this, your lazy coworker is never going to put in effort. You're going to stay frustrated AF, and they're going to continue to add to your workload. When you're working with a lazy coworker, you need to make sure you are not enabling them. And I know this is really hard because your lazy coworker probably has really good skills, or they know exactly what ball they can drop that you're going to be forced to pick up so that you don't look bad. As much as possible, you need to make sure that their laziness at work is not becoming your problem, because as we already explored, if it's not a you problem, it needs to stay that way. In most roles, your coworker's laziness is not going to have a direct impact on you at work, which makes it very easy for you when they are being lazy at work to not take on tasks and pick up their slack. However, sometimes your lazy coworker is going to impact the entire team. If that is the case, make sure that you stay tuned for tip 6, because I'm going to be speaking to exactly that. When your lazy coworker asks you to take on a task that is definitely and obviously theirs and has absolutely nothing to do with you, I know a lot of people and a lot of the clients that I work with do struggle to say no to people at work. And this isn't just a lazy coworker, it's a general thing. When you are faced with a lazy coworker asking you to take on extra work to pick up their slack, it's actually quite simple and straightforward to say no. All you have to do is say something along the lines of, I'm not able to take on that task at this time. It's simple, it's elegant, it's not giving a reason to debate, it's just simply but politely saying no. And in most cases, they're going to work and they're going to move on to their next colleague until eventually enough people say no to taking on their work that they stop being so lazy and do the work on their own. However, that's not true for all lazy coworkers. And in some cases, we are going to have to move into the next tip to deal with our lazy coworker, and that is to actually speak to them about it. Super duper important as we move into this task. If your lazy coworker is not impacting your work and they do not report directly to you, this is not your job. You are only going to speak to your lazy coworker about their level of effort when it has a direct impact on you. The last thing you're going to do if you are forced to have this conversation with your lazy coworker is say something that is going to make them defensive, along the line of,
stop being so f***ing lazy.
If it has come down to you speaking to your lazy coworker about their laziness at work, there needs to be 3 elements present in the conversation. You need to be clear, concise, and focused on the impact. This should not be about blaming or shaming your lazy coworker. What you should really be trying to do in this conversation is make sure that they're aware of the issue. Yes, it's entirely possible that your lazy coworker isn't totally aware that they are being lazy at work. When it comes from a place of service and a place of empathy where you are actually trying to help them succeed at work, they're going to be much more receptive and you are going to be much more likely to see a change in the behavior. Now, an example of something that you might say to your lazy coworker is, when you fall behind on the project tasks, it forces me to take on those extra tasks so that we can still complete this project on time. That said, sometimes having this conversation with your coworker isn't going to be enough, or it is so obstructive and is generating so much risk to your team and to your company that you actually need to implement the next tip, which is to escalate this. And I do not say this lightly. If you've watched any of my videos before, you know that I have a philosophy. The only place a tattletale is less welcome than on the playground is in the boardroom. And let's be clear on a little something here. Your manager isn't dumb. Well, they're probably not dumb. And they're probably aware of your lazy coworker's lack of effort already. For all you know, this could be something that they're already having conversations with them about. So do give the benefit of the doubt. But if you want to make sure that they're aware, because there are some deep impacts that is impacting the entire team, this would be the time to give it up, because ultimately your manager wants everyone on their team to be successful. And if they're not aware of a problem, they're not going to be able to help remedy it. And again, if your lazy coworker is just annoying you because they're lazy, this isn't something worth escalating to your manager or to HR. You want to take the step when there is a dramatic impact to your entire team and it's generating risk for your team or for the company. Don't take this one lightly, you guys. What about when your lazy coworker is getting a whole bunch of praise and you are not? Now, sorry for the change of scenery here, but the footage was actually corrupted and I did not want to cut this out because this is so important. When you're working with a lazy coworker coworker and they aren't pulling their weight and they are getting credit for, doing a whole bunch of awesome stuff that they're not actually doing, it's incredibly frustrating. Now, if you are doing the work and they are getting the praise, the thing that I want you to do is I want you to make sure that you're looping people in and that you are leaving breadcrumbs of your awesomeness. This might be CCing people or just making your manager aware of your contributions so that you can get the praise that you actually deserve for the work that you are doing. That said, if your lazy coworker is getting praise and it's not at your expense and it's not hurting you or anyone else on your team, then I want you to just focus on shining. Like, focus on your awesomeness because you can't control theirs and how they're perceived by others. I'm not saying that it's fair. I'm not saying that it's the way that it should be. Unfortunately, though, sometimes it is just the way that it is in organizations. The thing that you might be able to learn from your lazy coworker here, though, is what are they actually investing time on? Because they are obviously making either an impact or an impression that is helping them get acknowledgement. And if you want to do that, you can actually replicate what they're doing and take their lazy hacks and turn it into your favor to help accelerate your career. Back to the original scene. Hopefully at this point, you're feeling a lot better about your lazy coworker and how you can actually approach them in order to help them out. But I do have a bonus tip for you, and that is to make sure that you are being intentional about having an awesome day. I know, especially when you're working with a difficult coworker or a lazy coworker, it can be very easy to get really frustrated by their lack of effort, especially when you put so much into what you do. However, when you're intentional about creating an awesome day for yourself, that is going to mitigate that as much as possible. If you want more tips and strategies about how you can make every day awesome, I want you to go and check out this video right now. If this video helped you in dealing with your lazy coworker, give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already and you want more of the best career success advice on YouTube, make sure that you click the subscription button and the notification bell. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.